How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty darn good. Um, well, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's nice that there's somebody that has interest in the music, old Vancouver music for sure.
Well, it's actually interesting you say that because as I started this book, I just started making like a RPM, every song that hit the RPM charts. But then when I started Google researching and finding old magazines from the 80s like RPM and so forth, there was all these songs that didn't hit the top 40, but or top 100 even, but hit radio charts. And so I started listening to all those. So I've been just fascinated by how much music I didn't know existed. Although I did know about Straight Lines quite a bit, partly from Letting Go, and I always loved um, some of the other songs, including Rowan and so forth. Um, anyways, my thought was what I'm doing is trying to go back. I'm writing every song on the list, but also I'm pretty much doing a top 50 songs that didn't make the charts that I think should have. And so I want to talk about both songs that did make it and then songs that didn't.
Okay.
So the first one is Heads Are Gonna Roll, which was the first single. And I'm sure I still hear it on the radio on occasion. We have a couple of 80s, 90s stations here. And does that song still get royalty checks from you guys?
I don't know.
Oh,
Uh, it's possible. My royalty checks mostly these days are coming from TV shows and things like that. So I don't. To be quite honest with you, I don't really look where the money comes from. I just sort of put it in the bank. But it's possible it still gets played. Yeah, yeah. I thought it was a really good record. I was surprised when it didn't do better than it did.
yeah, I was surprised. Out of the singles on the album, Rowan made the charts.
Yeah.
And it's a good song too. But actually, of the three singles, I think the two that didn't chart, I enjoyed a little bit more. I think Heads Are Gonna Roll is just a straight ahead rock song. I wonder maybe a year or later it would have been bigger or what. But did you get a lot more airplay out west, like in Vancouver and so forth?
On Heads Are Gonna Roll?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about a long time ago. I think it got a fair amount of airplay. I don't know how far it made it up in the charts. You probably know that better than I do. Um, but like I say, we were expecting it to do better than it did.
One thing I've learned about doing a lot of research, and I think this goes more to your second album, is that the power of payola and radio and your record label at the time. Like I see, like Letting Go, of course, was nominated for June of the Year and Song of the Year for writing, and then you were let go before the Junos even happened, or about that time frame. It looked like from my research.
The band fell apart is what
Oh,
happened. Yeah. We were being managed by Bruce Allen, um, who, manages Brian Adams and Michael Bublé and people like that. We were being managed by him, and I think the band the band just started having interpersonal problems, and it fell apart. I mean, if we had stayed together longer, we probably could have really milked Letting Go and toured and been a lot more successful with that record than we were, because we sort of broke up right around the same time that it came out, which was a bad timing. But it was interesting because when the producer, he's a guy from New York, produced that record. Can't remember his name right now. But when we went into the studio and played it for him, everyone sort of knew that Letting Go was going to do really, really well. It had that feeling of being a record that was going to do well on the radio.
yeah, that one gets a ton of airplay still, from what I can
Yeah,
tell,
yeah.
all across
And
the
it and it
country.
and it's been covered a lot too.
Oh, has it?
Yeah, yeah.
We'll have to look that up.
Yeah, yeah, it's been covered at least three times. Not all that well, in my opinion. The second chord, so it goes from a C minor to the second chord, and it is a B flat chord over an A flat bass, which is not a very common chord in a pop song. It's sort of like a chord that Brian Wilson would have used in things like God Only Knows. He used chords like that that had bass notes that weren't in the chord. Um, and everybody gets that second chord wrong.
Oh, really?
Everybody, everybody that's covered that song has gotten that chord wrong. Yeah, and
Well, that's interesting.
it sort of gives the piece the flavor, you know.
Yeah, because when I did research, what I found interesting is very few songs by Canadian artists in Canada go top 10. You'll see lots of songs in the top 50, top 100, but very few go top 10. And Letting Go did. So the only songs in 1980, 81 that went top 10.
Yeah.
So just a great song that I still think is one of the best ballads of the 80s.
I think it would have been, I think it would have done a lot better if it had been released in the United States. It was released in Japan. We actually had a fan club in Japan. Letting Go was a big song there. It was released in Australia. It was big there, New Zealand. Um, but that was it. It never got outside of Canada. It never got released in the States, or as far as I know, it didn't get released in Europe. We did a French language version of it, which you can probably find somewhere, um, with our singer, with a French-speaking person in his ear by the microphone, and him learning the song phonetically, word by word. So we did a French language version, which did well in Quebec on the French charts. But like I say, it never got released in the United States, which was really disappointing.
Yeah, because I think this song would have been huge in the States. It's that it was really those ballads were so big in the early
Yeah,
80s.
yeah.
Interestingly enough, of all the songs on the two albums, by far my favorite is actually The Thing You Didn't Do. I think
Yeah,
it's such a neat song that goes different places. And maybe that's why it didn't do that well. I'd see it did land in some charts and so forth. But I just loved it, especially the
yeah,
instrumental.
yeah. Thank you. Well, that has an interesting history. So, the first band that I had was a band called Spring, and we had one number one record, and I think a couple of number two or three records. Um, and in between Spring and Straight Lines, I was working a lot, doing a lot of TV and radio jingles, and the one of the guys that was working in the jingle house, one of the lyricists there was Howie Vickers. He was in a group called the Collectors, which later became Chilliwack.
Hmm.
Um, but he left before they became Chilliwack, and I thought, a very good lyricist. So he and I got together between Spring and Straight Lines. We got together, and he would write lyrics, and I'd write melodies to it. And one of those songs was The Things You Didn't Do. It started off as just a 3-minute pop song. And I was doing a bunch of TV shows at the time, like variety shows for CBC, and they said, we'd like to do this thing where we get a rock band with a full symphony orchestra, put them on Little Mountain in Vancouver, and and record the whole thing. Um, so the only thing that I had that sort of would work in an orchestral context was that song. So it started off as a 3-minute pop song, and then I added all the orchestra stuff to it, which made it, I think it's about 6 or 7 minutes long. But all that orchestra stuff was added afterwards, so that we could do this TV show. And then the recording that we did for the show was the thing of that song was the thing that got us our record contract. Um, and it was the beginning of Straight Lines because I think the only other, well, when I recorded that, I brought David Sinclair in to play the guitar, and Peter Clark came in and sang. So both of those guys later became Straight Lines. But at the time we recorded that, we didn't have a band. But that song got us our record contract, and then we put Straight Lines together. The When we re-recorded it, and I went over to England to put the orchestra on at Trident Studios, which was where David Bowie recorded Hunky Dory. I love the string sound on that record. So we recorded the orchestra at Trident in England, and there happened to be a 12-foot Steinway grand piano in the studio, and they told me that it was the same piano that Paul McCartney used for Hey Jude. So I overdubbed that piano on the track. So what you're hearing on that recording is that piano and the strings that are recorded in England.
So when I did some research, I am assuming you did a lot of the arrangement of the music for the songs
All
on
of
the
it,
albums,
yeah.
right? Yeah, I just
So
kind of assumed that.
my dream when I was in high school was to combine rock and roll music with orchestra. I've always, my first love has always been writing for symphony orchestra, and I was writing for symphony orchestra when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. Um, and what I really, really wanted to do was put the two kinds of music together. So my first band called Spring, we were all straight out of music school, and everyone in the band was musically literate. We could all read music, and everybody sort of liked orchestral music. So that band, Spring, I wrote almost an hour long suite for rock and roll band and orchestra, and we performed it twice with the Vancouver Symphony, once with the Edmonton Symphony, long before Procol Harum did their thing. Um, and then it just turned out to be just way too expensive to tour around with a 80-piece orchestra. So that idea sort of fell apart. And then when Straight Lines started up, I thought, this is another chance to use orchestra on our recordings because our music was, I mean, we did some simple, 3-minute pop tunes, but a lot of our music was a lot more, was a lot longer form and a lot more intricate than the pop songs that were around at the time.
It's funny you should say that because when I was writing about Heads Are Gonna Roll, it is a basic pop song, but there's such subtle little pieces like the piano coming in early, right? Just so you have this guitar riff, then the piano comes in. It just makes it different than the average pop song of the time. Which
Yeah, yeah. The bop 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 bop. That's very orchestral. And the funny thing is that same riff appeared later in a James Bond theme. The one that the one that Paul McCartney actually did. I can't remember what it was.
oh, that Live and Let dies
Yeah,
early.
I think it was Live and
Live
Let
and
Die.
Let
You
Die.
can
Yeah.
listen to the riff in that, and it's very similar to the riff in Heads Are Gonna Roll. We did Heads Are Gonna Roll several years ahead of that. Who knows? The ideas float around in the ether.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed listening to some of the music, you'll hear something now and you'll be like, okay, I heard 8 years later I heard this. And this
Yeah,
song was never been heard of before, right? So it's quite common to see musicians, play with that. Even I was looking at Randy Bachman stuff. He was in those bands like Union and stuff in the early 80s. And you listen to some of that stuff, it's derivative of early 70s stuff. And it's just, I mean, it's just how music works, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. We don't live in a bubble. I mean, if you got your ears open and you're listening to what's going on around you, it's inevitable that some of it is going to seep into your work. You can't. It couldn't be any other way. I mean, music. If you look at the history of music from early music in the 11 and 1200s, it has been a constant growth of people listening to people and building and building and building and building and until we have the music that we have today.
yeah, for sure. That's what I'm noticing as I go through this as well. Because one thing is I'm writing this book, but I'm not a musician. So I hear what I like and so forth. But I love the fact that you talked about the orchestra because I mean I'm a big fan of Chicago, for example, and
Hmm.
and their massive horn section and especially their early stuff, less when they went ballady. But so on that note, Body Electric was a really different band from Straight Lines, and yet as I listen to your conversation, I see that where the similarities would come. I because it was I'm surprised Body Electric wasn't big. They seem the style was very similar to what was being played at the time, but with again similar quirks. Like I mean, having saxophone jamming in the middle of a solo, which I love saxophones. I just love that in the songs that were there. So one song I really liked was "Somewhere in Time," which I've actually talked to Frank a little earlier. We were talking more about his days with Union and Randy Bachman. We briefly talked about Body Electric, and this song I loved as a ballad a mid-tempo ballad, I suppose.
Yeah.
Any stories about that one?
Uh, I know the title of it came from a movie, and I'm just trying. It was a Christopher Reeves movie, I think. I just really like the title. I'm just trying to remember. I know the lyrics were written by David Sinclair and I think I wrote most of the music in that one. I don't know. When you're in a room writing with people, it's hard to know who does what. But David and I were the main writers in Body Electric, and we would both sort of come up with stuff separately, and then we get together and combine and add some lyrics or add some chords or add a verse or whatever. So it's hard to know exactly where one thing started and another. But yeah, I thought it was a good tune. I thought it was a good hooky chorus. That band, Body Electric, we were definitely in the electronica thing. I mean, for a long time, David Sinclair and I were the only two members of that band. And we would hire hire bass players and drummers when we went out on the road. And then Frank joined us for a short period of time, but it didn't work out. And so David and I were mainly that band. Like I said, we went through a bunch of different drummers and a bunch of different bass players and
Yeah, I
stuff.
noticed
But
that because I noticed the second album was just you two.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I find you had made two videos back in the days. The Stop the Music, which was by far the most different song of the four albums of yours I heard in the 80s that you were a part of. Stop the Music was unlike anything else you guys had. And then with a saxophone solo in the middle of what would be a pretty good dance song.
yeah. That was the idea. The idea was to do sort of an electronica dance song. I mean, we were really wanting to have a hit record. And the trouble is when you write something to be a hit, it seldom is a hit. I mean, you really have to write the music you want to write. And if it happens to hit, then it hits. But with that song, I just gotten a whole bunch of synthesizers and samplers and sequencers and whatever was the state of the art at the time. And I was really playing around with all these ideas of being able to have a sequencer shoot out riffs. So the riff in that, which is do do da do do da do do da do do, would be a hard thing to play, but a very easy thing for a sequencer to play.
Hmm.
That was the basis of that one. And most of that album, most of that album we recorded in my garage, and then we went into the studio and added a real drummer. But we recorded it with a drum machine and us all playing in a garage. And then we went into the studio, added a drummer, and then mixed it in the studio.
Well, that's interesting because there's definitely a time where there was the electric drums were really big. Because yeah, that was a fun song. Just so different. That's why I'm surprised you tried writing as a hit, and it kind of felt like it just because it was so different, but yet really 1986 time frame. Um, but then what's interesting is that you finally all your songs didn't make the charts, and then near the end they started to. Like, do you think they can tell? Which the other video, which was very quirky and fun, and then Strangers in Love both did chart on the
Yep.
RPM charts.
So
And
Strangers in Love had a video. And there was another song called Out of the Blue, which also had a video. Um,
oh,
they were all horrible videos. They were just really, really bad. We were not happy at all with the videos. We didn't have very big budgets back then, and people like who are the two guys? Godley and Krem were doing a lot of videos in England and doing wonderful things with the police and stuff like that. We just didn't have the funds or the backing to be able to do any videos. So they were all done real cheap. They were done by guys that had one camera and stuff like that. And they just weren't very good. They weren't very good videos, which is, I mean, I think Strangers in Love was maybe the best one. At least it had sort of a look to it. But he used a lot of old vintage footage from the 1930s, which had absolutely nothing to do with the song. Um, so yeah, there you go.
it's funny to say that because I so many videos I watch now, I'm like going back and watching them when I do this, and some are just nothing to do with the song. It's interesting. I saw a video for "Do You Think They Can Tell?" I did not find a video for "Strangers in Love" or "Out of the Blue," so I don't know if they're just not on YouTube or what. I will have
Yeah,
to
it's
snoop
it's
around
on,
more.
it's on YouTube. I'm pretty sure. Have a
Take a
look.
look.
If not, I'll send me an email and remind me, and I'll send them all to you because
Fun.
I've got them all. As bad as they are, I've got them all.
Well, you watch the '80s deals now, the majority of them actually were bad.
Yeah.
Like very little story. I was watching Loverboy video the other day because that's where it was on, and I'm like, this makes no sense. But I mean, that was the look in the '80s. Just go back and forth between the band and some sort of vague story that may or may not have anything to do with the song, but and lots of women in skimpy clothing. That was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
'80s.
Yeah, well, I think the best videos came out of England. I mean, Peter Gabriel did some pretty wonderful videos in Genesis, and I'm just thinking of that era, but definitely the Police did some good videos. Um, so I mean, they were around, but it was really hard to compete with those because they had really high production values, and they obviously people had spent money on them. Whereas videos here, other than it was an afterthought. They weren't thought of being something that would help to market the song. They were just
Hmm.
something to put on Much Music. And they were. I mean, if you had a good video back then, I think it really helped get airplay for the song.
Well, I think you're right because I think I started listening to music in '83 or '84. I was about 14 at the time. And I think of bands like Honeymoon Suite where they really did put money in the budget early on. And it's,
Yeah.
it's really interesting how, I mean, you talk about the Police, a band that was big. So the studio would put the huge money that would go into those videos, right? And so that's why I find a big difference between those bands and bands like Bioelectric who were trying to get out there. Did you have any touring in the States in either of these bands?
No.
No?
No, we toured Canada. We definitely toured Canada in the middle of winter. We had lots of car accidents on black ice and trashed our equipment on one trip. We did lots of road trips, um, and there are many stories to tell about our road trips. But we never got down into the States, ever, or over to Europe. There was just no impetus from the record company. It was we were with CBS, and they I talked to the A&R guy from CBS down in Los Angeles, and he basically said, well, yeah, you've got a hit record, but this was with Letting Go, but they have to play your music in Canada because we had CanCon back then, which is Canadian, like, record uh, stations had to play a certain amount of Canadian content, and that was all laughed at in the United States, that they had to play our music, so it really didn't count. So yeah, it was a difficult time. It was great that we got to go in the studio and record, and we got to go out and promote our records, and we got to be a band for a while. But the promotional part of it was really weak. I mean, I remember being on tour when Letting Go was out. We were on tour, and I think we were in Winnipeg, um, and I and it was in the middle of winter, and I went to the local record place to see if our record was there because we were touring to promote the record, and there none of our records were in the record store. So we're there, and people, they'll come to a concert, and for the next maybe 3 or 4 days, they'll look for your record if they liked you. Um, but then they'll go on to someone else. And if there's no records there, then you don't sell any records. It was a little bit heartbreaking for us, which is why I think the band fell apart.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I watched a documentary on the band The Pumps from Winnipeg, and they had the same problem. They had some single rise in the charts. They were in the Maritimes, and everybody was top 10 on the radio, but you couldn't buy it
Yeah.
anywhere. And I mean, I'm finding as I look into the Canadian music, how many times not the band, the record label just wasn't on the ball when things went big or could have went big.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. There was no coordination between the touring and the promotion and when things were where. We would get into a town, and somebody would set up an interview with us on the local, pop radio station, and quite often the guy that was interviewing us didn't even know who we were, and we had a hit record on his station. So it was bizarre. It was bizarre. Like I said, it was a little bit heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's tough to hear.
Fun.
Well, yeah, I talked to a couple who said like at least we had fun and got to live a rock star lifestyle, somewhat a Canadian rock star lifestyle, which is a little
Yeah.
different sometimes. I mean, traveling the highways in Canada in winter can't be a fun way to get out there. I guess lastly, oh, two things. We'll go lastly after this. Is there any other singles that you had out there, other than obviously Letting Go, which was big? Are there ones that you recall now and just like, I still like this song, or I still play this song when you do perform and so forth?
Well, I don't really perform that much anymore. David Sinclair, the guy that, he was sort of my musical writing partner for many, many years and also my best friend, passed away a few years ago. So there's, mostly what I'm doing, I'm writing orchestra music now. That's what I'm doing, with my time every day. So I'm not playing those songs, but the one song I can still sit down and play all the way through is Letting Go. I definitely know that one. Things You Didn't Do, I can play that one all the way through. Heads Are Gonna Roll, I can play that one all the way through. But a lot of them I've just forgotten. Um, so yeah, but there are, I think I'm quite proud of some of those songs and the ones that you made, Things You Didn't Do, definitely. I think is a really good tune. It's a good arrangement. I think it's a really good record. I mean, it's long, but it's a really good record. It takes you to some nice places. Um, yeah, so I think we did some good stuff, and I think we did some stuff we can be proud of.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. So I just today this morning, I'm a teacher. Have a prep this semester, so I spent my prep. I just listened to all the songs we might talk about today, and I listened to things wouldn't do like three times because I just that one just stays with you afterwards. Anyways, I guess you kind of already answered this, but the last question was, what are you doing now? So I did go on your website and saw you were doing some orchestra stuff.
Mhm.
And is that being played? Like, where? How does that world work nowadays?
Well, well, you can see this is some of it back here. I've got, I don't know, about 100 published pieces. Um, so it's mostly commissions. So somebody from an orchestra will call me up and say, we want something. I just delivered my third symphony a while ago to an orchestra in Quebec City, actually. Um, so I'm writing a lot of stuff. I just had a piece performed down in Texas. I won't be going down to the United States for a while, so that'll probably be the last time I'll be down there. But I've had a lot of music performed in the States by orchestras all over the place. I mean, I've certainly had a lot more success with my orchestra stuff than I did with my rock and roll stuff. So it's mostly commissions, and you get a commission. It depends how big the piece is. If it's a symphony, that could take me anywhere from 4 to 6 months to write.
Mhm.
Um, and then I usually go and conduct the premiere wherever it happens to be. So I'm traveling a lot. I'm also doing big like opening ceremonies and stuff like that. I did the Vancouver Olympics. I did the FIFA World Cup opening with Cirque du Soleil. Um, so, like big ceremonies, anything, everything, anything that's big and over the top. That's what I like to do. My wife and I, as a producer, director, choreographer, so we do a lot of stuff together. So we travel all over the place. We were in Istanbul and Azerbaijan and like lots of places in the United States and in Montreal doing shows. So we do a lot of live stuff like that as well.
So in the end, you ended up doing your dream that you wanted to back when you were 12.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I mean, it sort of took a a route differently than, but it's all about timing. Like I couldn't be doing what I'm doing now when I was doing the rock and roll stuff. There was not an appetite for the music that I'm doing now. I also went through about close to 20 years doing film and television stuff. And that had its day. There were, about 10 years ago, budgets started getting slashed and producers stopped caring about the music that was in stuff. They just wanted something there. And I managed to be in the rock and roll business when there was money to be made. It's very difficult now. I managed to be in the movie and TV business when there was money to be made. And right now, it's not a lot, but there's money to be made in music publishing because this stuff is physical. It's a physical thing that people have to buy, right? I mean, it's not like downloading a sound file or something like that, which you can steal, or a TV show or a movie. It's actually something that's physical that has to be put in front of an orchestra so they can play it. So it's it right now it's a way of making some money and keeping me busy.
Like I said, it's pretty cool that, I mean, I teach high school, so I always tell kids, follow your dreams and so forth. And although it took some time, you end up doing exactly what you envisioned back when you're 12, and not many people end up doing that, even if it's a
Yeah.
lengthy journey to get there. So that's a cool story.
What do you teach?
I teach history, creative writing, and leadership.
Right. So which school are you in?
I'm in Lloydminster. We're like a border city in Alberta, Saskatchewan.
Yeah, I know where it is. I played
Oh,
there.
oh, I guess, yeah, I probably played almost everywhere. Hey,
Yeah. No, I
yeah,
played there. It was a very interesting gig. Um, yeah, so do you have a school band?
we do. Yeah.
I'll talk to your band teacher and mention my name, but it's Robert Buckley. That's my what I use for that stuff. And he probably your school band is playing some of my music.
Well, I'll have to ask because yeah, we have a really good band. We're running our first ever live concert next month. We just finished auditions and we're doing this kid talent concert. We're actually our kids are doing a rock song to start that they wrote themselves. We're
Yeah.
going right into a Frank Sinatra cover, and then into another band cover. That's so we're having quite a bit of fun setting it up. But I'm just they're running that. I'm just the teacher in charge. I'm not too musically inclined. I sure wish I was. But I definitely ask them about you because
Definitely. Yeah,
I'm quite
do.
curious.
Yeah. Because I've written a lot of high school band music.
I'm
Really a
definitely
lot.
gonna take. I want to go listen to some of your stuff because especially now that connecting the dots between what I like the most and the story where it came from makes me intrigued to listen to some of the um, this type of music.
Yeah, it's all on my website. I mean, the best place to go on my website is the live concert stuff. And you can see a performance of my Third Symphony is there and a whole bunch of other stuff. There's also another page that has a bunch of film and TV scores that I've done. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff to go look at.
Well, it's fun because that's
Letting
what.
goes on there as well. So
Well, it's interesting how your music has evolved over time, which is what happens. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you coming online and so forth.
you're welcome.
Best of luck on whatever your new piece you're working on is,
Thank you.
and I'll be checking out your material in the next little while.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for getting in touch. And it was great talking to you.
Well, thank you very much. Have a great
Okay.
night.
Okay. Take care. Bye bye.
You too.